You're listening to TIP.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's show. As regular listeners know, Stig and I like to press the limits of creative and unique ideas, and on today's show we have an interview with art collector Scott Lynn. Scott has been an entrepreneur building new and innovative companies for over 20 years, and throughout that time he always had a passion for collecting art. Then in 2018, Scott created a company called Masterworks, which is a platform that securitizes fine art by filing the ownership of various paintings with the SEC. So Scott was the first person to enable investors to collectively purchase and trade shares in multi-million-dollar works of art by artists like Picasso, Monet, and Warhol, and many others. So get ready to hear a fascinating discussion with the creative Scott Lynn.
You are listening to The Investors Podcast, where we study the financial markets and read the books that influence self-made billionaires the most. We keep you informed and prepared for the unexpected.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Investors Podcast. I'm your host, Preston Pish, and as usual, I'm accompanied by my co-host, Stig Broderson.
All right, guys, we are super excited to be here with Scott Lynn. And Scott, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks, Stig.
So, Scott, we've covered many types of investments here on the Investors Podcast, but art is clearly a new frontier for all of our listeners. I personally know so little about this topic, and I find it quite fascinating. So talk to us about how you got started in this sector of investing. I am super pumped to hear how you respond to this.
I think like many collectors, I first started collecting art really out of passion. But, like many collectors, I've made a lot of mistakes along the way and then eventually learned that art could also be an investment. From our perspective, we see this asset class, which is really enormous. If you listen or read any of the statistics on art as an asset class, Deloitte estimates that there's $1.7 trillion in fine art in between ultra-high net worth collectors' homes. There's $50 to $60 billion a year that sells in terms of volume, 2 to 3% turnover. So it's this very interesting investment. But the problem with it, and we hear this all the time, is that the only way to participate is if you have a couple $1 million to buy a painting. So it's this really unique outperforming asset class that really nobody can afford unless you have a lot of money to acquire the art. We think it's a natural asset class to be securitized.
You made such an interesting leap, right? So you collected art, clearly very interested in art. You could say that about a lot of people. I would say you took it just not one step further. I guess you took it like a mile more than anyone else. Could you talk to us some about that thought process? How did it become an idea and how did it turn into what it is today?
My background